At my retirement party, my daughter stood up, raised her glass, and smiled. To my father, she said, "A man of discipline. A man of order. A man who taught me everything, except the truth." That's when I knew. Someone had told her. Someone had told her what happened that night, 25 years ago. And in front of 80 people, she was about to say it out loud. So I did the only thing I could. I stood up and told my version first. Let me take you back to 1998. I was 42 years old. A sergeant in the city police department. Not a hero. Not a villain. Just a man doing his job and keeping his head down. I had a wife, 2 kids, and a mortgage I barely kept up with. My daughter, Claire, was 12 at the time, straight A student, sweet, quiet, always reading. She worshipped me, thought I could do no wrong. And maybe that's why I buried the truth. Because I didn't want her to know what I did. It started with a phone call. Tuesday evening. I was off duty, home early, grilling chicken on the back patio. "Walt," said the voice on the other end. "You're gonna want to come in." I recognized the dispatcher's tone. It wasn't a suggestion. I put down the tongs, grabbed my badge, and told my wife I'd be back in an hour. I wasn't. When I got to the station, they handed me a case file. Hit and run. Fatal! Victim, a woman in her late 30s. No ID. Just a torn grocery bag, a cracked phone, and a silver locket with a child's photo inside. The suspect, white male, early 20s, driving a black pickup. Witnesses said he was speeding, ran the red light, didn't even slow down. I opened the folder and froze. The suspect's name, Evan Reed. I knew that name. Everyone did. Son of Judge Harold Reed, the same judge who'd ruled on almost every case I'd investigated in the last 10 years. The same man who could make or break a cop's career with one phone call. His son was drunk, reckless, and violent, but always walked away clean. Because Daddy made sure the system stayed tilted in their favor. I hated Evan, but that night, something shifted. Because when I pulled up to the scene, Evan was already there. Standing by his truck, sober, pale, and crying. "I tried to stop," he said. "She came out of nowhere. I didn't see her. I didn't even know I hit her at first." He sounded different. Not cocky. Not smug. Just scared. He didn't run. He didn't call his father. He called us. And for a brief second, I saw a kid, not a monster. The other officers wanted to take him in immediately. But then the judge showed up. Pulled me aside. Didn't yell. Didn't threaten. Just asked. "Walt, please. I'm not asking you to make it disappear. I just need some time. Give me 24 hours to figure this out." I didn't say yes. But I didn't say no. I walked back to the scene. Ordered the evidence team to seal the report. Logged the body under Jane Doe. No arrest made. Pending further review. That night I didn't sleep. I watched my daughter reading on the couch. And all I could think was, what if it had been her? What if Evan had hit her instead? Would the judge be begging for mercy then? Would I? Next morning I came to work. And the file was gone. Vanished. Body transferred. Witnesses re-interviewed. Everything clean. I didn't erase it, but I didn't stop it either. And by the end of the week, the entire case was buried under paperwork and silence. Life went on. Evan disappeared to study abroad. The judge retired a year later. I stayed in the department, rose through the ranks, earned my pension, and I never spoke of that night again. Not to my wife, not to my daughter, not to anyone. Until last weekend. At my retirement party, I thought I'd made it. I'd beat the system. Or maybe I was the system. Old friends clapped me on the back. They gave me a plaque, a gold watch, told stories. And then Claire, my sweet little girl, now a woman in her 30s, stood up. She raised her glass, smiled, and said to my father, "A man of discipline, a man of order, a man who taught me everything except the truth." That pause, that look in her eyes, she knew. I stood up before she could go on. My voice cracked, but I said it clearly. There's something I need to say. Not just to my daughter, but to everyone here. I'm not proud of what I'm about to tell you. But I've carried it long enough, and it's time. And I told them. The whole room fell silent. And when I was done, my daughter didn't cry. She just looked at me, nodded once, and walked out of the room. That was 3 days ago. She hasn't called. I don't blame her. But this story isn't over. Because yesterday I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just 4 words written in neat black ink. She was my mother. I must have read that line 30 times. I sat at the kitchen table, coffee cold in my hand, the envelope beside me like a loaded gun. There was no name, no other note, no clue who sent it. Just that single, clean sentence on an index card. She was my mother, the victim. The Jane Doe. The woman from 1998. The one I let disappear. She had a child, and now that child knows. I spent the rest of the day staring out the window, replaying every step of that night. Every choice, every silence. I told myself back then that there was no family. No ID, no relatives, no one who'd come looking. But she had a child. Someone who remembered her, missed her, needed her, and I helped erase her from the world. That night I couldn't sleep. I tried calling Claire, but it went straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I had nothing left to say. At 2:13 a.m., I went down to the garage and opened an old storage bin. It smelled like dust and old regrets. I pulled out a box marked 1998 evidence. I shouldn't have it. I was supposed to destroy it when I retired. But some part of me couldn't let it go. Inside, an old cassette tape, notes, photos, all from that case. And then I saw it, the locket. Small, silver, heart-shaped. The same one the Jane Doe was wearing. I picked it up. It was cold in my hand, still scratched from the impact. I pressed the tiny clasp and it popped open with a soft click. Inside, the same faded photo of a little girl. Dark curly hair, big brown eyes, maybe 3 years old. She would be around 28 now. The math worked. The person who sent that letter wasn't guessing. They knew, which means someone's been digging. Someone found what I buried. Not just the police file, but the truth. I had to find out who. The next morning, I went to visit an old contact from the force, Mitch. He was the closest thing I had to a friend, and he owed me more than a few favors. We sat in the back booth of a diner, just like we used to when we were on night shifts. I slid the envelope across the table. He read the card, then looked up at me like he saw a ghost. "You think it's legit?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "You said she had a locket, right?" I reached into my coat pocket and placed it on the table. Mitch stared at it for a long time, then leaned in. "We didn't run a DNA match back then, you remember? The tech wasn't what it is now." I nodded. She was Jane Doe. No prints. No hits. "We didn't try hard enough." He lowered his voice. "You really want to open this door, Walt?" "No," I said. "But I think it's already open." Mitch agreed to pull some old files, quietly. "Maybe we could trace where the body was transferred. If any DNA was ever stored, if any next of kin ever showed up." But before I even made it back home, I got a text from an unknown number. "Stop digging. You had your turn. That was it." No name. No emoji. Just black and white. But it confirmed one thing. Whoever sent that letter, they were watching me. That night, I sat on my porch with the locket in my hand and a glass of scotch that didn't help. I thought about that little girl. The one in the photo. Did she grow up in foster care? Did she ever wonder why her mother never came back? Did she spend her life trying to find her? And now that she has, what does she want from me? Justice? Revenge? Or just the truth? The next morning, there was a second envelope. No stamp. Hand-delivered. Inside, a photo. A woman, mid-20s, standing outside a library. Long dark hair. strong eyes, holding a sign that read, Justice for Sarah Thompson, 1998 hit and run. No arrest, no closure. Sarah. Her name was Sarah. After all these years, I finally knew her name. And someone, her daughter, was trying to bring her back into the light. That same afternoon, I went to visit Claire. She opened the door but didn't invite me in. Her eyes were cold. Not angry, just tired. I held up the photo. She was your mother? I asked softly. Claire stared at the picture, then at me. No, she said. But someone's looking for hers, and I think you owe her more than you ever owed me. She started to close the door, but I stopped it with my hand. Claire, wait. What? She said, not cruelly, just exhausted. I need to make this right. She nodded once. Then start by talking to her. She's already tried to reach you. My heart sank. She called me? No. She's here. Claire looked over her shoulder and called inside. Lena, he's here. And that's when I saw her. The girl from the photo. Older now. Wiser. Stronger. She stepped into the doorway, met my eyes, and I saw it. The locket. Around her neck. Hi, she said, and her voice was calm. Steady. You knew my mother. Not a question. A statement. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Because how do you start a conversation like that? How do you face the daughter of the woman you helped erase? And how do you answer the one question I saw burning behind her eyes? She stepped onto the porch. No anger in her face. Just expectation. She wasn't there to scream or to cry. She was there for something harder. Truth. I'm Lena, she said. I know who you are, I managed to say. Claire told me. Lena gave a slight nod, then glanced down at the locket she was wearing. My mom wore this every day, she said. I used to ask her who the little girl was. She'd just smile and say, someone I love. Her voice stayed steady, but there was something cracking underneath. I didn't know I was adopted until I turned 18. My foster mom gave me a box with a few things. My birth certificate, some photo, and a newspaper clipping. About a woman hit by a truck in 1998. No driver arrested. No investigation. Just a paragraph. She looked back at me. It was her. Sarah Thompson. The name landed like a rock in my chest. I nodded slowly. I'm sorry. Lena narrowed her eyes. For what? The accident? Or the cover-up? I hesitated. Then I gestured to the bench on the porch. Would you sit with me? I asked. She didn't move for a second, then gave a short nod and sat down. The sun was starting to set. Long shadows crawled across the lawn. Everything felt like it was holding its breath. I folded my hands. I was a cop, I said. You know that already. She nodded once. I got called to the scene that night. Your mom, Sarah, was already gone. No ID, no wallet. Just that locket and the torn grocery bag. Lena stared at the ground. I went on. The man who hit her was Evan Reed. The son of a powerful judge, a man who had influence over almost every case I worked on. Her jaw tightened. He wasn't drunk, I said. Not that night. He didn't flee the scene. He called it in. He stayed. He was scared. Broken. So you let him go, she said, still not looking at me. I told myself it was just for the night. Let things cool down. Get the full story. Maybe, I trailed off. No, I corrected. That's not true. I didn't want to lose my job, my pension, my reputation. I knew what would happen if I crossed that judge. Lena looked up at me, eyes sharp. So you let my mom stay a Jane Doe. Let her name disappear. Yes. A long silence followed. Then she said, You knew she had a child. You saw the photo in the locket. I closed my eyes. I did. I told myself it was a cousin, a friend, anything but what it obviously was. I didn't ask questions because I didn't want the answers. The truth hung between us, heavy, sour. I wasn't trying to hurt you, I said. Or your mother, But you did, she replied. Both of us. You left her nameless. And me alone. The words weren't shouted. They didn't need to be. They just landed. Hard. I nodded. I know. She took a breath. Do you remember what she looked like? I do, I said without hesitation. She had short dark hair, a blue jacket. She was holding flowers. Lena nodded slowly. She was picking them up from the corner store. For her sister's birthday. She smiled bitterly. She died trying to bring joy to someone else. I wanted to reach for her hand. Offer something. Comfort. Closure. Anything. But I didn't deserve that. And she wasn't asking for it. She stood up. I didn't come here to scream at you, she said. I've done that already. In my head. For years, I stayed seated. I came to tell you I'm going public. I'm going to reopen the case, make sure the full story comes out. Your name, Evans, the judges, all of it, I nodded. I won't stop you. She looked surprised. Maybe she expected a fight. You're not going to lawyer up. I buried enough. If you're the one to dig it up, so be it. She took a step down the porch, then turned back. One more thing, she said. I want her body moved, reburied, under her name, with a proper stone, something her daughter can visit. I'll pay for it, I said. Everything. You just tell me where. For the first time, I saw her face soften. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But something like recognition. She gave me a small nod and walked away. After she left, Claire came out and sat beside me. She's tougher than I was at that age, she said. I didn't answer. You did the right thing, Dad. I did the wrong thing for 25 years, I said. I just stopped doing it. Claire reached over and squeezed my hand. She was looking for a monster, she said. You didn't give her one. I was the monster, I whispered. She shook her head. No, you were just a man. And now it's time to be better. That night, I wrote a letter to Lena. Not to justify, not to apologize again. Just to say, if there's anything I can do that will help your mother rest, I'll do it. No lawyers, no press. Just a man trying to make one thing right before it's too late. I sealed the envelope. Put it on the table. And then I finally slept. For the first time in days. I woke up before sunrise. The house was quiet. Just the hum of the fridge and the ticking of the old clock in the hallway. I walked into the kitchen expecting the envelope to still be there, untouched. But it wasn't. Instead, in its place was a plain white card, no name, no envelope. Just one line written in small, careful handwriting. Tomorrow, 5 p.m. The bridge, no signature, no instructions. Just that. I didn't need a name. I knew it was from her, and I knew exactly which bridge. The old iron one over the freight line, just outside town. The place cops used to take their lunch breaks before the department installed cameras everywhere. Private. Quiet. Forgotten. By 5 p.m. I was already parked, waiting. It was a cloudy afternoon, the sky thick and still like it was holding something back. I sat on the hood of my car, hands in my coat pockets, watching every car that passed. At 5:02, Lena pulled up in a silver sedan. No plates on the front. Probably a rental. She stepped out, no makeup, hair tied back. Just a black jacket, jeans, and a leather folder tucked under one arm. No smile. No anger. Just that same quiet, steady presence she carried with her. She walked toward me without saying a word, then stopped a few feet away. I read your letter, she said. I nodded. She looked around. You alone? Yes. She held up the folder. I found something. She opened it and pulled out a few sheets. Newspaper clippings, old emails, scanned documents. Then a photo. Not of her mom. Of Evan. Standing on the steps of a courthouse in Nevada. From 3 years ago. I thought he disappeared, she said. Turns out he changed his name. He's a real estate developer now. Low profile, but not invisible. I studied the photo. Thinner, older, but it was him. He has a family, she said. Wife. 2 kids, she paused. I thought maybe he left it all behind. But no, he moved on. Built a new life, and not once did he speak her name. There was no hatred in her voice, only disappointment. I'm going to him next, she said. And I'm going public. I didn't try to talk her out of it. I just asked one thing. Why me first? She looked at me for a long time before answering. Because you stayed. Her voice was quiet now. You were part of the silence, yes, but you didn't run. And when I knocked, you opened the door. That matters. She looked down at the photo again. But it doesn't undo anything. I know, I said. She closed the folder. I'm giving him a chance, just like I gave you. 1 meeting, 1 conversation. After that, the rest goes to the press. I nodded, then reached into my jacket, pulled out a small black box. She looked at it warily. It's not an apology gift, I said. It's something I kept. I opened it. Inside was her mother's sun pin, the one Sarah wore on her jacket. Lena's eyes flickered. For the first time, her breath caught. I kept it all these years, I said. I don't know why. Maybe I couldn't let go. Maybe I knew I shouldn't have tried. She reached out and took it. No words, just silence. And that silence said more than anything else could. After a while, she stepped back. I'm not promising forgiveness, she said. I'm not asking for it, I replied. She nodded, then turned and walked back to her car. Before getting in, she looked over her shoulder. You asked if there's anything you can do. Yes. If I don't make it to the press first, if something happens, don't let her name vanish again. Then she drove off. That night, I sat in my living room with the lights off. News on mute, TV flickering, but my eyes were somewhere else. I thought about Evan, about Lena, about Sarah, about how many people we failed just to protect ourselves. Then the doorbell rang. It was Claire. She stepped in without asking. I heard, she said. She's going after Evan, I nodded. She sat down next to me. Are you ready for what comes next? No, I said. But I'm not running either. She placed something on the table. A manila envelope. Then it's time you do what she's doing. I looked at her. She said, tell the story. On your terms. Before someone else does it for you. Inside the envelope was a microphone, digital recorder, and a printed list of media contacts. At the top of the list, Lena's name. Claire had already spoken to her, already made plans, already seen what I hadn't. She wasn't just giving me a second chance. She was handing me the rope to either climb out or hang myself. The next morning, I pressed record and said the first words I should have said 25 years ago. My name is Walt Mason. I was a police sergeant, and I buried the truth. I didn't rehearse, didn't write a script. I just talked like I was sitting across from Sarah herself. I told the story as plainly as I could. No excuses, no soft edges, just the facts. I told them about the night Sarah was killed, about Evan Reed, about the call from the judge, about the silence I chose, the reports I didn't file, the questions I didn't ask. And most importantly, I told them her name, over and over. Sarah Thompson, not Jane Doe, not a case number. Sarah. When I finished, the file was over 38 minutes long. I listened to it once, then emailed it to Claire and Lena. No press, no headlines. Not yet, just them. They had the right to hear it first. A few hours later, Lena replied, "Thank you for saying her name." That's all she wrote. And somehow, it was more than enough. By the end of the week, the recording was online. Claire helped me post it to a small justice blog. Nothing flashy, just facts. We didn't expect it to spread, but it did. By day 3, it had 50,000 plays. By day 5, local reporters were calling. And by the end of the week, the front page of the town's main paper read, Retired officer confesses to cover-up in 1998 hit and run. Then the real phone calls started. The department wanted a meeting. The mayor's office requested clarity. Even the DA's office opened a preliminary inquiry. Funny how quickly silence becomes noise when the internet gets involved. One afternoon, about a week after the story broke, I got a call. Blocked number. I answered anyway. A man's voice, deep, gruff, tired. You should have called me before this all went public. I knew who it was. Judge Harold Reed, Evan's father. The man who started the cover-up with a single favor. You want to talk, I said. No, he replied. I want to remind you what's at stake. I didn't say anything. He went on. My son has a family now. This scandal, this little crusade you've started, it doesn't just affect you anymore. I waited. Let the silence drag out. Then I said you had 25 years to say her name. You never did. Your son never did. I won't stay quiet just to make it comfortable for you. He didn't respond for a while. Then, just before hanging up, he said, You're going to destroy what's left of our lives. And I answered calmly, Good. Maybe that's fair. The next day, Lena emailed me again, this time with a scanned image attached, a copy of her birth certificate. It had been updated. Under Mother, it read, Sarah Thompson. Under Father, it read, Unknown. But someone, Lena I assumed, had written one word next to it in pen. Present. The following week, Claire and I stood at a cemetery on the east side of town. It was cold, overcast, but peaceful. Sarah's new headstone had just been placed. It was simple, elegant, and finally complete. Sarah Thompson, 1970-1998 mother, daughter, never forgotten. Lena stood on the other side of the grave. She didn't cry. She just rested her hand on the stone for a long moment. Then she looked at me. Thank you for paying for this, I nodded. It was overdue, she smiled, just barely. Everything is. After the burial, she walked with me toward the lot. She stopped at my car. You asked what else you could do, she said. Yes. She looked at me square in the eyes. Speak at her memorial. In front of the community. Tell them who she was. I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't feel like I deserved to. She noticed. Don't do it for you. Do it for her. Give her the voice she lost. I nodded. Okay, I will. The memorial was held in the town's public library. Same place Sarah volunteered at when she was in high school, according to Lena. People packed the room. Some came for her. Some came out of curiosity. Others came for closure. When it was my turn to speak, I stepped up to the podium, looked out at the faces, and took a breath. Then I said, I failed Sarah Thompson. I failed her daughter. And I failed the very idea of justice I swore to uphold. And then I told them everything. Again, but this time face to face. In public. I said her name. I told them what happened. I didn't ask for forgiveness. I didn't justify. I just gave back what I could. A voice. A name. A truth. When I stepped down, I saw Lena in the front row. She stood, clapped once. Others joined. And for the first time, I felt something close to peace. That night, back at home, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the digital recorder Claire had handed me weeks ago. I pressed stop. My story was told. But something told me hers was just beginning. 2 days later, I got a text from Lena. Just one line, it's happening tomorrow. I didn't ask what it was. I already knew. She was going to see Evan, the man who hit her mother, the man who said nothing for 25 years, the man who watched the world forget a woman he took from it, and said nothing. Now she was going to look him in the eye. The meeting wasn't public. No press. No police. No lawyers. Just Lena and Evan. She didn't tell me the location until it was already done. Said she didn't want noise, distractions, or pressure. I respected that. But I won't lie, I sat by the phone the whole time, watching the screen like it was a countdown. That evening, just after 7 p.m., my phone buzzed. Claire again. She's okay. She asked me to call. And him? I asked. She'll tell you herself. Next morning, there was a knock on my door. Lena. Same black jacket. Same steady eyes. But something had shifted. Her face was tired. Her voice softer. But her presence stronger. We sat on the porch again, like the first time. No one spoke for a minute. Then she said, I met him. I figured. She nodded slowly. He cried. Almost immediately. I waited. Said he's been carrying it for 2 decades. Told me he has 2 daughters now. That they look like me. She paused. He said the day he hit my mom broke something in him. That he wanted to go to the police. But his father shut it all down. Said the truth would ruin everything. I looked at her. Did you believe him? She took a breath. I believe he didn't fight hard enough. I believe he let someone else take the blame for his cowardice. But I also believe he's lived with it every single day. And I believe he's sorry. She reached into her bag and pulled out something I didn't expect. A folded note. Bold, yellowed, with handwriting I didn't recognize. He gave me this, she said. It's a letter he wrote 10 years ago but never sent. Addressed to me. Back when he found out my mom's name. She unfolded it carefully, then handed it to me. I read, Lena, I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't even deserve to speak your name. But I say it anyway every day. I say it to remind myself of what I took. What I failed to protect. If there's ever a day you come looking, don't let me hide. Please. Let me answer. It was short, but real. No lawyer had edited it. No PR team had polished it. Just guilt. And the ache of silence. I handed it back. Lena folded it, tucked it away, then looked out across the yard. He asked me what I wanted. What justice looked like. I stayed quiet. I told him justice would have been him going to prison. Justice would have been a little girl growing up with her mother. Justice would have been the truth told immediately. She looked down at her hands. But now I don't want revenge. I want her remembered. And I want this to never happen to another family again. I felt a lump rise in my throat. She was stronger than any of us had been. She had every reason to destroy him. But she chose something harder. Legacy over rage, truth over punishment. She looked at me. I asked him to come with me. I blinked. Come where? To her grave. 3 days later, it happened. Quietly. Privately. Just the 3 of us. Lena. Me. Evan. No speeches. No ceremony. Just a gray morning. Damp grass. And a small bouquet of white daisies. Evan stepped forward first. Kneeled down in front of the grave. His voice was barely audible. Sarah, I don't expect you to forgive me. And I don't know if heaven works like that. But I came here to say I'm sorry. Out loud. Finally. Then he placed the daisies on the headstone, stood, and stepped back. Lena took his hand. Briefly. Just a second. Then let it go. That was it. No closure. No dramatic ending. Just truth. Told late, but told. Afterward, Evan left. I don't know where to. Maybe back to his family. Maybe somewhere else. Lena and I stayed a while longer. She knelt beside the grave, traced the letters of her mother's name, then turned to me. You gave her back to me. You found her first, I said. No, she whispered. You just never let her fully disappear. We walked back to our cars in silence. When she reached her door, she turned to me. This isn't the end. No, I agreed. It's the beginning of the part where we start doing things right. She smiled, and for the first time, It wasn't tired. It wasn't guarded. It was full. Alive. She opened her car door, paused, then looked back one last time. You're not just the man who buried the truth, Walt. You're the man who dug it back up. And with that, she drove away. I stood there for a while, long after her car disappeared around the corner. The air was still, cool, heavy with that late autumn quiet. The kind where the world seems to hold its breath, waiting for something else to fall. Maybe a leaf, maybe a truth, maybe the next step I hadn't yet seen. The next morning, I woke to a new email. Subject line, request for comment, local paper. They'd heard about the memorial, about Evan at the grave, about Lena. And now, the story was gaining momentum again. Only this time, it wasn't about the crime. It was about what happened after, about healing, about confrontation, about how far truth can travel once it's finally set free. I declined the interview. Told them they should talk to Lena. She gave them a statement, short, direct, and painfully honest. Justice doesn't always come in courtrooms. Sometimes it comes when people finally stop lying. Sometimes it comes when silence ends. My mother's name was Sarah Thompson. She was loved. She mattered. And she will be remembered. The story ran under the headline, Truth, Late but Loud, The Legacy of Sarah Thompson. And something shifted. People started calling. Old friends, former officers, even two retired detectives I hadn't spoken to since '98. Some offered support. Some offered apologies. But some were angry. I got a voicemail that afternoon. Male voice. Familiar, but I couldn't place it at first. He didn't say his name. Just, you think dragging old ghosts into daylight makes you a hero? You think rewriting the past fixes it? You're burning down everything we built, Walt. Hope it was worth it. Then he hung up. No number. No second message. But I remembered the voice by sundown. Captain Dan Holloway. My supervisor back then. The man who looked me in the eye and told me, "This one's above your pay grade, Mason. File it and move on." I hadn't heard from him in years. But now here he was, behind the curtain again, watching the walls tremble. Because the truth doesn't just expose the guilty. It rattles the whole foundation, especially for those who stood on it. That night, I pulled out the old yellow folder again, the one with Sarah's case, Evan's photos, the locket, and I added something new. A letter, handwritten, labeled, to be opened in the event of my death. Not because I felt like I was in danger, but because if something ever happened, I wanted Lena and Claire and the world to have everything, all of it. No more partial truths, no more shadows. 2 days later, a man showed up at my door. Early 40s, clean suit, nervous energy. He introduced himself as Daniel Holloway Jr., Captain Holloway's son. I invited him in. He didn't sit. Just paced. My father told me you'd come crawling back one day, he said. Said you were weak. That you couldn't stomach the silence. I didn't answer. But then I listened to your recording. The one online. And I read Lena's statement. And for the first time in my life, he paused. I realized my father wasn't protecting the force. He was protecting himself. I offered him a seat again. This time he took it. I found something, he said, at the bottom of an old storage archive in our garage. My father kept everything. Even the original witness statement from 1998. I froze. The one that never made it to the file? I asked. He nodded. The florist. The man across the street. He saw the whole thing, described Evan. The truck. Even the plate. Said he watched the judge show up and start making calls. It's all in there. My dad kept it hidden. Probably figured no one would ever come looking again. He pulled out a copy and placed it on the table. And just like that, the silence that had ruled this case for decades cracked again. Another voice long buried now heard. Daniel Jr. looked at me. I'm not proud of my father, but I want to do what he never did. And what's that? Testify. Publicly. Bring the statement to the DA. Reopen the file for real this time, I nodded. Not with excitement, but with something heavier. Respect. Gratitude. Maybe even hope. Before he left, he stopped at the door. You know, he said, when I was a kid, my dad always said your name like it was a curse. I raised an eyebrow. Now I know why. You were the only one he couldn't control. That night, I called Claire. Told her everything. She didn't say much. Just keep going, Dad, and I did. I met with the DA 2 days later. Gave them my testimony again, this time under oath. Daniel Jr. submitted the missing statement. Evan, he agreed to cooperate fully. Lena, she sat in the front row of every hearing. Never flinched. Never blinked. Just listened, like her mother would have. The town changed, slowly. Not overnight. Some people hated me now. Some treated me like a ghost. But others, strangers mostly, would stop me in grocery stores or parking lots and whisper, I remember Sarah. Thank you for saying her name. I had a story too, but I stayed quiet, and that's when I realized this story, it was never just about a single woman, a single night, or a single mistake. It was about all of us. All the truths we bury to protect what's easy. All the voices we silence, even when they're screaming. All the daughters still searching for names in the dark. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. It wasn't a criminal trial. Statutes of limitations had protected the powerful. But it was public. Official. A rare reopening of a case everyone had once sworn to forget. The courtroom was small, but packed. News crews stood shoulder to shoulder behind the last bench. Retired cops I hadn't seen in decades sat with arms folded, watching with hard eyes. And in the second row, directly behind the prosecutor's table, Lena, wearing her mother's pin. Evan sat across the room, alone, his lawyer to his left, his regret written all over his face. Judge Harmon, a younger man I didn't know, opened the session briskly. Statements were read. Documents submitted. The missing witness statement was entered into the official record for the first time in 25 years. Then it was my turn. I was called to the stand under oath. The room fell silent when I walked past the rail. Every footstep felt heavier than the last. Once seated, I swore in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. And I did. Again. The same way I had on the recorder. The same way I had at the memorial. But this time, formally, permanently, legally. I didn't embellish. I didn't dramatize. I told them what I saw. What I knew. What I didn't do. And why. When I finished, the prosecutor asked one final question. Mr. Mason, do you believe justice is possible now after all these years? I paused. Thought about it. About Sarah. About Lena. About the crowd. Then I said justice is never perfect. But it starts when people stop lying. So yes, I think this is justice. Not all of it. But enough to stop pretending it didn't happen. There was a pause. Then, quiet murmurs. The judge thanked me. I stepped down. And the moment I did, I saw him. Judge Harold Reed. Sitting in the back row, gray, stooped, almost small. He didn't look at me. He just stared at the bench where I'd been sitting, like it might still swallow him. Later that day, the hearing was adjourned, pending a full civil review. The DA's office would decide whether to proceed with charges against Evan, or possibly the former judge. But the real verdict had already happened, because truth was no longer buried. And for the first time in 25 years, it had its day in court. Outside the courthouse, Lena and I stood by the stone steps. Reporters buzzed like flies nearby, flashing cameras, shouting questions. She ignored them. Spoke only to me. You looked calm up there, she said. I wasn't, she smiled faintly. You said it, though. All of it, I nodded. How about you? You ready if they go after him legally? She paused. If they do, I'll testify. I'll show them the letter. I'll tell them what he told me. And if they don't? Then I'll do what my mom never got to do. What's that? Keep walking. The next morning, I got a call. Block number. Again. But I answered. Mr. Mason, said the voice. It wasn't Holloway. It wasn't a reporter. It was a woman. Soft-spoken, measured, professional. I'm with the Office of Public Accountability. We're launching an internal review of every unsolved fatality between 1995 and 2005 involving the Reed Court. We'd like your help, I agreed. Because once you start digging, really digging, you don't get to stop at one body. Truth has a ripple effect, and I was standing in the middle of the wave. Over the next few weeks, I sat with investigators, handed over every file I'd kept, every note I'd made, every memory I could still put into words. Names I'd once forgotten came back. Faces, timelines, patterns. The system didn't fail once, it had failed over and over again. Sarah Thompson had simply been the one who finally got a name again. But she wasn't alone. Lena started a foundation, the Sarah Project, for families who'd lost someone in cases that were sealed, buried, or accidentally erased. Within a month, they had over 300 inquiries. People who thought no one would ever care. People who now had a reason to hope. One afternoon, she called me. I have a question, she said. Go ahead. You said justice starts when people stop lying, right? Yeah, then answer this honestly. She paused. If the judge hadn't stepped in that night, if he hadn't made the call, would you have done the right thing? Silence. I didn't answer right away, because I wasn't sure what she wanted to hear. So I told her what I knew. I think I would have done what I was trained to do. And what's that? Protect the system. She was quiet for a long time, then said, thank you for not pretending. I don't have to anymore, I said. You made sure of that. That night I wrote a second letter. Not to Lena, not to the DA, not even to Claire, but to Sarah. I don't know who I was writing it for, really. Maybe just myself. I started with, I never knew your voice. I never got to hear you laugh. But I know what your absence sounds like. It echoes through your daughter every time she speaks. And I ended it with, I hope you see her now. I hope you're proud. I hope you know she changed everything. I folded the letter. Put it in the same box as the pin, the photo, and the old case file. Then I locked the box. Not to hide it, but to protect it. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was restless, but because I knew what had to happen next. The last piece. The last person. The one who watched everything unfold and never asked a single question. Claire, my daughter. The woman who stood beside me at the memorial, who invited Evan to my retirement party, who connected Lena and me with a grace I never earned. But also, the girl who once sat on the stairs at 10 years old, hearing her father hang up a phone call, eyes blank, voice quiet, saying, "It's done." She never asked me what was done, and I never told her. Until now. I called her the next morning. "Come by," I said. "Tonight. No press. No Lena. Just you and me." "Okay," she said without hesitation. "It's important. I know." She arrived around 6 p.m. No makeup. Hoodie and jeans, just like when she used to come home from college on weekends. I made tea. She didn't touch hers. We sat at the table in silence for a full minute before I spoke. "There's one thing I haven't told you." She raised her eyebrows, but said nothing. "It's about that night. The night Sarah was killed. Now her posture shifted slightly, tense but not surprised. "I know," she said quietly. I blinked. "You know?" She nodded. "Not everything. But I was old enough to remember that something happened. The way you came home. The way you drank more that week. The way Mom didn't talk about it." She folded her arms. "I looked it up when I was 17. I was stunned." She went on. "There was almost nothing online. Just a one-line obituary and a blurry scan of an old newspaper. But I knew her name. I knew she was hit. And I knew you knew more than you were saying." I swallowed hard. "Why didn't you ask me?" She looked at me then, really looked. Because I was scared of the answer. The room fell still. Even the clock on the wall seemed to pause. Finally, I said, "I wasn't brave. I wasn't righteous. I was a coward, Claire. I let fear and reputation matter more than someone's life." She nodded slowly. "And now I'm just trying to finish this the right way. If there's such a thing." She leaned back in her chair, crossed her legs. "You know, I always wondered why you pushed me so hard to follow the rules. Why you cared about order, discipline, protocol." She tilted her head. "Now I get it. You were afraid I'd become you." Her voice wasn't cruel. It wasn't even angry. It was clear. Honest. Like glass, sharp but clean. I looked down. "You didn't become me," I said. "No," she replied. "But I did have to learn how to fix what you broke." Silence again. Then she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out something small. A USB stick. "This has the full archive of the Sarah project so far," she said. "Names, dates, patterns. Lena wants you to have it." "Why?" "Because she thinks you should be the one to bring it forward next." "To who?" Claire looked at me steadily. "To Congress." I froze. "Claire, I'm not a politician. You don't have to be. Just tell the truth about Sarah, about the department, about how easy it was to stay silent." "They're opening a national review on mishandled fatal cases." "You could be part of the testimony." The idea terrified me, not the speaking part. But what it would mean, what it would reopen, what it might cost. But then Claire said, "This isn't just about her anymore, Dad. It's about how many Sarahs are still buried." I took the USB, held it in my hand, felt its weight. Small, light, but heavier than anything I'd carried in years. Claire stood up to leave. At the door she turned. "You don't owe me anything. I know, but you owe her." She didn't have to say who. "Sarah, Lena, both, all." That night, I sat in my study and opened the USB, scanned the names, photographs, dozens of faces, some old, some young, all gone, all forgotten, all waiting. The next morning, I made 2 calls. One to the Office of Congressional Oversight, one to Lena. To both, I said the same thing. "If you still want me to speak, I will." Lena replied within minutes. Her message was short, but it undid me. She would be proud. A week later, I boarded a train to D.C. First class. Paid for by the project. Not because I asked, but because they insisted. "You're not going as a man with a guilty past," Lena had said. "You're going as the man who named it." As the train pulled away from the station, I looked out the window at the receding town. My town. The one that shaped me. The one I betrayed. The one I was finally ready to face. And then I took out my notebook and began to write the last thing I needed to say. I didn't write it for a courtroom, or a camera, or even for Lena. I wrote it for Sarah, the version of her I never got to meet. The one who deserved more than silence, more than shame, more than a single paragraph in a forgotten newspaper. I wrote her story with every ounce of truth I had left. And when I was done, I didn't reread it. I didn't edit. I just closed the notebook, held it against my chest, and watched the world pass by. Washington felt colder than I expected. Not in temperature, in weight. The buildings were tall, proud, guarded. The marble clean but impersonal. I wasn't dressed like the other men I passed on Capitol Hill. No polished briefcase, no expensive shoes. Just a coat I'd had for years and a notebook that felt heavier than any weapon I'd ever carried. Inside the hearing room, the committee sat high above, their microphones gleaming beneath harsh lights. The chairwoman introduced the hearing with firm, clear words. Today, we hear testimony from individuals connected to a series of suppressed fatality cases, with the goal of identifying patterns of institutional failure. She looked at me. Mr. Mason, whenever you're ready, I stood, took my place behind the mic, opened the notebook, and started reading. I didn't start with my rank or my badge. I started with Sarah. She was 28. She liked yellow flowers and volunteering at the library. She had a sun-shaped pin she wore every day, even on the night she died. Her name was Sarah Thompson, and for over 2 decades she was erased, because people like me let her be. The room went silent. Every camera turned. Every pen paused. I kept going. I named names, dates, incidents that were quietly closed, calls from judges, statements never filed, witnesses ignored. I gave them what they asked for, evidence. But I gave them something more dangerous too, emotion. I told them what it felt like to bury a truth so deep it started rotting from the inside. What it did to my daughter, to Evan, to Lena, to Sarah's legacy. And when I finished, I said only one thing more. We can't go back, but we can stop pretending this didn't happen. We can stop treating silence like it's noble. We can say the names, even if it's late. When I sat down, the room was still quiet. No questions at first. Just the soft sound of someone clearing their throat. Then the chairwoman leaned forward. Mr. Mason, she said, why come forward now? Why not stay silent like the rest? I looked at her. Then at the other panelists, then at the gallery behind them. And finally I looked at the small blue pin I wore on my coat. The one Lena gave me. The one that once belonged to her mother. I straightened it gently and said, because the rest of my life began the day I stopped lying. After the hearing, reporters followed me down the steps. I didn't stop. I didn't speak. I just got in the cab and left the Capitol behind. On the ride back to the station, I checked my phone. A message from Lena. She would have cried. Then she would have laughed. Then she would have hugged you. I smiled. Then another one came through. From Claire. A single photo. Me on the screen of the TV in her living room. My granddaughter sitting cross-legged on the floor, watching me speak. Caption. She heard Sarah's name today. That night, back home, I walked to the cemetery one last time. No press, no ceremony, just me and her. I placed my notebook beside the headstone, then sat down on the bench across from it, and spoke softly. They know now, Sarah. They know you existed. They know what happened. You're not erased anymore. I sat there until the wind picked up, until the sun dipped below the hills, until the world grew quiet again. But this time it was the good kind of quiet, not the silence of guilt, but the peace of having finally told the truth. As I stood to leave, I looked down at the headstone one last time. And for the first time since this all began, I didn't feel like a man standing over a grave. I felt like a man who finally kept a promise.